In a matchup of the SEC heavyweights, the Alabama Crimson Tide welcome the Florida Gators into town. Two teams coming off of like very different performances. Alabama just suffered just an incredibly tough loss on the road at Tennessee. Meanwhile, Florida over the weekend made light work of Texas A&M. But both these teams still the best of the best in the sport. I think Florida. I know they had that loss to Georgia, but they still have just been like just an absolute wagon, a really fun team to watch on both ends of the court. And of course, Alabama, known for their offense, prolific, high flying attack, but just should be a matchup with no shortage of fireworks. So, Subi, what are you looking forward to most in this one?
It's going to be a blast, Riley. And it's funny you led this off by saying two heavyweights in the SEC. Like I feel like damn near every matchup
Yeah,
could use that as a descriptor. And
it's true.
as we get to the end of the regular season, I really want to thank the SEC for providing us games every single week that are like top 10, top 15. And this is another one where we got 6 versus 3. But what I'm looking forward to the most is the personnel, and more specifically, two Kuzi finalists. All right, we got Walter Clayton Jr. and Mark Sears. That list has been trimmed down to 5, and both of those guys are on it. And again, just speaking to the greatness of the SEC, Zakai Ziegler's on that list too, by the way. Um, but man, Walter Clayton and Mark Sears are going to be a lot of fun. Towards the end of that, in the second half of that Vols Bama game, Mark Sears put on the cape and he was doing everything in his power
Mhm.
to keep the Tide attached and then give them a very, very good shot at winning the game, which they should have. Walter Clayton's been kind of a revelation as well. He's been terrific. He's a third of their three-headed monster with him, Will Richard, and Elijah Martin. But watching that matchup individually is going to be a lot of fun. I know we have done so many recaps, and I listened to Greg and Cart, and there was a juncture during the middle of the season where Cart was talking about how Braden Smith takes these point guard matchups personally, like X, Y,
Mhm.
and Z is better than you. Braden Smith also on that Cousy Award list. I just named you 4, but
Go ahead and name the fifth. Who's the
I'm
fifth?
trying to remember who is it. Do you know? I mean, it should be somewhat obvious with like if we're talking Clayton Sears, Braden Smith, and Zakai
Yeah.
Ziegler, those are 4 of the best
Wouldn't
point
be,
guards that
I'm,
I'm
I'm looking
sure.
at the top teams. It wouldn't be like Elijah Hawkins. It wouldn't be anyone from Auburn. It wouldn't be Todd Pettiford. It wouldn't be I don't think Milos Uzan
Let
is
me just
quite
do
good
a
enough to
quick
crack that.
Kuzi.
Jacoby Gillespie?
No, I don't think he made it there. Cam Jones.
Oh, duh. Man, that
Cam
was
Jones.
bad on me
That
for
was.
getting that, for getting him. I was looking through the top 10 on Kim Palm.
I
So,
got
yeah.
sidewinded though. But the point that I'm making is like, are Walter Clayton and Mark Sears going to look across the court and take
Mm.
this personally?
Yeah, yeah.
It very well could happen. I'm looking at those two, man. The guard play is going to be so terrific. What about you, Riley?
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned the guards. Even beyond Clayton and Sears, it's funny because, like, I mean, Clayton is seventh right now in Kim Palm's Player of the Year rankings. I sort of feel like he hasn't even been Florida's best guard the past 2 games because Will Richard has been on such a heater. So I was just like looking through Bart Torvik and found this stat. In SEC play, there are 7 players who have attempted over 83s and are making them at a 40% clip or higher. 3 of those 7 are playing in this game. It's Aiden Holloway, Chris Youngblood, and Will Richard. All attempted like somehow Aiden Holloway. Big shout out to him for like completely, I don't know, turning his career around after a really disappointing freshman year at Auburn. Former McDonald's All American, kind of seemed like he was in that Jared Harper, Sharif Cooper mold and just underwhelmed that first year. But he's found such a good role under Nate Oates, and he's canning 47% of his threes in conference play. Just absurd. Youngblood comes in at a tick under 42%. Will Richard at also right around 42% as well. But just it's like it just speaks to how good these offenses are. And it's like when you watch them play, though, it makes sense why they have multiple players shooting over 40%. The ball movement's so good. They run good concepts. I think Florida in particular, and this is honestly why, even with the Gators going on the road, why I'm going to lean them to pick up a really nice road one here. Their ball movement is just insane. There's skill at literally every position. Like it just seems like whether it's Alex Condon or Thomas Hauk or even Micah Henlockton, who gets the if they get they're all over the offensive glass, but they have such a good sense of when to go up and put it back versus finding the open man on the perimeter. And when they kick it out to the perimeter, they're like constantly looking for a better shot. It was so apparent against A&M where there'd be like 4 or 5 passes just swinging it to find a dude with a wide open three who usually drains it. Like I absolutely love watching Florida's offense. It's gorgeous. I think if we want to pivot from the guards to the bigs, Condon is like one of my favorite players in the country. He's so adept at like just finding dudes cutting back door, like playing as a using him as a playmaker at the top of the key. He's got decent bounce and athleticism as a lob threat. Like I know he's not even starting right now. I think Golden has been starting Thomas Hauk and Ruben Chinyelu. But he's so freaking impactful whenever he gets into the game. Like I absolutely love this Florida team. Every time I watch them, I'm just it's they play like the prime Roy Williams teams with a little bit of modern flair, and I think that's what like hooks me into them. But yeah. Have you noticed anything about any of these bigs or anything else that could swing this game beyond the guard play?
So glad you brought up the bigs. Look, at the end of the day, at a high level, there's a ton of talent all over the floor between these two teams. But Florida, it just seems like they have guys that can bring all the different aspects of winning, and they do it at such a high level, right? So Condon, yeah, he's a rim threat, a lob threat for sure, but I think he's their best defensive player. And again, this is a team that's top 10, top 15 in both offense and defense, right? Like Florida is great defensively as well. But you also mentioned Thomas Hauk, who I don't know, this might be a hot take. He might be their best offensive weapon right now. Like he is so efficient. He's been doing everything offensively, and I think he's more than earned that starting nod from Coach Golden. And then yeah, you mentioned Ruben Chinyelu. Like, dude, you don't have to do much else besides be a huge body. He reminds me a little bit of Patrick White, just with
Mhm.
or Young, excuse me,
Patrick
Patrick
Young, yeah.
Young, with just how friggin' jacked he is.
Yeah.
He hits the glass. He's a tough nosed player, dude, for a transfer from Washington State. So I mean, they just have so many different players that contribute in such different varieties that they're so difficult to beat. And the other thing I'd mention, Riley, is that Florida, when they hit a new gear, like when they hit their top gear, I don't think anyone else in the country can hang with them. I'm going to be brutally honest with you, man. So we saw what they did against Auburn. They split against Tennessee,
Mm-hmm.
but I mean, man, when they turn it on, I don't think anyone in the country can hang with them. And they kind of needed that against LSU, which was 2 games ago, not 3 games ago. They were down double digits, and LSU's not a good team, but
Mm-hmm.
they ended up winning by like 15 or 18. Georgia, they were down 24, and they were leading with like seconds to go. Um, and then this A&M game, we saw it on display. So I'm giving a lot of credit to Florida, but I think Bama deserves a lot of credit as well.
Yeah.
And I think for this game in particular, I've seen that trend of Florida the last 3 games starting out slow. LSU, Georgia,
Mm-hmm.
even Texas A&M, they were down
Yeah, they were.
6. Like
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if I read too much. I might be splitting hairs, but that's a game where game day was there, prime time. Like I figured they'd go soup to nuts. Um, you can't start slow against Bama on senior night in Tuscaloosa.
That's a good point. And yeah, there's a chance. I think Bama's key to winning is Sears has to be the best guard on the court. I think Holloway needs to be super efficient and probably give you 10 to 15 off the bench. From a bigs perspective, man, I feel like this Bama front court is so tough for me to figure out. I mean, they've been starting Mo Diabate, who's just basically a glue guy. Like Jaron Stevenson's really up and down. I think Cliff Amorie, he might have one highlight play every other game, but he's still playing like 17, 18 minutes a game. There's just it just I think why I'm leading Florida in this one is they're just more versatile. Like Bama needs a Herculean effort from its guards to win this one, where like even if Elijah Martin or Clayton has like a quiet-ish game, you're still going to get production from Houck in the front court. You're still going to have Condon making plays. And I think defensively too, like watching Bama against Tennessee, they still kind of fall asleep ball watching. They can get beat back door, and that's what Florida loves to do. That's what like any of those bigs facilitating at the top of the key, they're going to find Elijah Martin or they're going to find Will Richard or Walter Clayton cutting to the hoop. And with Florida's ball movement, I just think that they can get Alabama in rotation. And I know with Alabama's size and when especially when they go big, like in plays, I mean sometimes they still play Jaron Stevenson at the three. I think we've been seeing that less and less as the season's gone on, but they can put Diabate there as well. It, Florida's just too good on the glass to like that Alabama shouldn't really find an advantage there. So yeah, that to me is what it comes down to. And then defensively, like Florida's just been so sound on that end. And I don't know if you noticed, Subi, but despite how good the Alabama offense is, best in the SEC, they turned the ball over a good bit. And some of that could be attributed to their pace and how they're trying to generate quick points. But like, you don't want to, if you're turnover prone and you got to make an entry pass when Micah Hand-Lockton has had super active hands since coming back, like both with Condon protecting the rim, like this Florida team's going to jump passing lanes. They can get out and run. And like when you talk about them hitting that other gear, that's like the easiest way for them to do that.
Yeah, it's a really good point. I do think the key for Bama to win this game, you mentioned the guards for sure, and obviously Sears has to be the best player potentially on the court, right? Not just in the guards matchup,
Mm-hmm.
but yeah, taking care of the basketball. Florida does a good job of turning you over, creating steals. But the thing is I don't know. So Riley, I'll be honest with you. Florida is a better team. I agree with that. But I do think these guys are pretty comparable,
Yeah.
the two of them. And so we're in here in March. I don't think it's too wild. I mean, we see crazy things happen, but it's not that wild to say that Bama's going to win this game in my eyes. And I do think there's an added bump of it being senior night,
Mm-hmm.
being at home. I think Bama's going to play a clean game. I think we're going to get a great effort from Mark Sears. But it's funny you mentioned some of the front court. We've gone this long without mentioning Grant Nelson's name. I will say he's been kind of underwhelming this
Mm-hmm.
season. I heard the broadcast say that he's shooting 20 some odd percent from three.
He's only
I
made
didn't
18 threes all season. Yeah.
That's crazy to me, man. Like maybe I didn't pay enough attention to Bama, but that is like that's shocking to me. I thought he was a much better shooter than that.
Yeah.
Um, so I do think he's going to have a better game. Like I just think Bama's going to play a very clean game, especially having the worst taste in their mouth after Tennessee. Because by the way, folks, they absolutely should have won that game. 5 seconds call is unforgivable. You can't do that. Jemai Meshack hitting a half court shot. Like a lot of things went wrong for them being up four. And I mean, I'm viewing them as a team that did end up beating Tennessee. I'll be honest with you. So I think they get right. Senior day bump at home, Tuscaloosa. And I think we get a great performance from Mark Sears, but we also get a really good performance from Grant Nelson. The thing I will say though, man, like I don't want he might be capable of doing it, Mark Sears, but
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if you want to be in a position where he has to be the offensive engine towards the end of the game because that's what he was against Tennessee.
Yeah, that's a good point. I still think he's good at home. I will say I think he's good enough to get the job done. They do need, I think, like LeBaron Philon. It's funny. There are times where it's like he's one of those who I think gets caught ball watching every once in a while, but he has like the really good anticipation to create turnovers, to kind of negate it. But obviously he had the brutal 5 second call and everything. But he and Holloway just feels so like indispensable in this one. I think Sears can get it done at being the guy, being the offensive engine, being the one who, with the ball in his hands, who takes over late game. But I don't think you can have either of them no show. Like I already said, I think Holloway needs 10 to 15 points. Phylon, he's got to get you double digits as well. You can't have like I know he's sort of been streaky like really throughout the month of February, but this is one of those games where you need him locked in. You need him getting to the free throw line. You need him to take probably 3 or 4 threes, make at least one, hopefully two, to get it done here.
No, I mean this has to be Bama's best performance of the season, and then guess what? You have to somehow be better in the finale because you go to Auburn. But I'm not worried about the Auburn game just yet. They'll probably end up losing that, but I think Riley they put forth an exceptional effort. I think Sears is going to be great. I think Grant Nelson is going to be better than what he's been all season. Bama wins this 91-84.
Wow, you think Bama gets it done? I'm gonna say Florida gets it done, and it's close, and then the Gators pull away at the end. I like them to win like probably 90-81, very similar to what they did against Auburn. But whatever happens, we will be back breaking it down afterwards. Thanks for tuning back into the Sleepers Media YouTube channel. Shout out to everybody who stuck with us over the past couple of weeks. We're excited to be back and giving you all the coverage you need throughout conference tournaments starting next week, the regular season finales, of course, the big dance.